How I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. Growing up, I got bullied a lot and I never had a best friend. After graduating from college, I landed a really good job. I actually started working as a forest ranger and this was my dream job. I love being outside in nature. Like I said, I don't have a lot of friends. I even had to move to a smaller town to be at this job. When I got to this small town, immediately one girl started trying to befriend me. Let's call her Katie. Katie was extremely nice to me. Like almost too nice at the beginning. She was always inviting me to go out and even introduced me to all her friends. I ended up really liking her friend group, which was so nice. A month into living there, weird things started happening. One day I woke up to a knife in my tire. Then a few days later, 2 of my packages were stolen. I decided to install a Ring camera and I told nobody. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, my Ring camera notifies me that someone is outside my door. The person was wearing a black hoodie, so I couldn't see their face, but I could tell that they were a woman. I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. That's when I see a black figure outside my door. Couldn't see exactly who they were, but I could tell it was a woman. I obviously didn't confront them because I didn't know if they had weapons. Instead, I turned on my porch light and they ran away. The next morning, I realized that they were scoping, trying to figure out how they could get in my house. I went to the police and they told me that it was probably just teenagers playing a joke on me. I decided to believe them because I couldn't imagine somebody wanting to rob me. But more weird things started happening. I have my packages stolen at least once a week, so I decided to get a P.O. box instead. Mind you, while all of this is happening, I'm still hanging out with Katie and her friends. She was always calling me her bestie, and we would do everything together. She would even come over to my house and sleep over. I truly thought that she was a good person. One night, I go out with Katie and her friends. Katie decided to get belligerently drunk. This is when she started saying things like, "We know you have money. You come from money, don't you?" I decided to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, they were all gone. So I found out my best friend set me up to get assaulted and robbed. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I said I'm on Instagram. When I come back from the bathroom, I realized they ditched me. By the way, they had given me a ride to the bar. Because there's no Uber at that time in my small town, I ended up having to hitch a ride with some random man. The next day, Katie comes over super apologetic. She even asked me if she could sleep over, so I said yes. The entire time she was at my house, she kept trying to smoke cigarettes outside, and she kept leaving the door unlocked. I finally go to bed, I check that the door is locked, and it was. Then at 2 a.m. I wake up to my Ring alarm notifying me that there's people outside. When I look, there are 4 men standing at my door, and they're yelling at me to open the door. They even said, "Be ready because we're horny." I was petrified. I instantly called the police and told them that they needed to leave, which they did. Then I go looking for Katie and she's nowhere to be found. When the cops came, they ended up telling me that Katie had done this to other women, and that the group of men were her cousins. That's when I realized that she was the one stealing all my stuff. They were arrested, but they couldn't keep him there. How am I going to be in the same town as her? I don't think I should have to move. What should I do?
I have this, had, past tense, this friend, let's call her Alex, and a few months ago, her and I were hanging out and I was telling her how I had just booked my solo trip to Europe. She was like, "Oh wow, how fun," and asked if she could come meet me in Barcelona during my trip. And I was like drunk at the time, so of course I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds so fun. That's a great idea." And then the next morning when I sobered up, I was like, "Do I actually want her coming?" But then I was like, "No, it'll be fine. Like it'll be fun if she came." Narrator, it was not fun if she came. So she invited herself on my solo trip. And keep that little tidbit in the back of your mind because you're gonna need that for later. So fast forward, the trip comes around and Alex meets me in Barcelona. And day one, I'm kind of picking up some red flags. Like I had just been noticing that she was basically making fun of every single thing I did. Like the one time I was brushing my hair in the bathroom and she comes in and she goes, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Brushing my hair?" And then we had to take a taxi somewhere and I flagged down the taxi. The taxi driver asked where we were going and I literally just gave him the address. Like what you're supposed to do when you call a taxi, right? You tell them where you're going. She bursts out hysterically laughing and I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" And she goes, "You." I'm like, sounded like a fucking Disney Channel laugh track every move I made. Like, why the fuck are you cackling because I'm tying my shoes? Like, what? For the trip, she did things that were kind of similar to that, but it was way more subtle. But on the trip, it was just, she was straight up bullying me to my face, laughing at everything I did, making fun of me, just making me feel like shit, and was just so negative and brought horrible vibes the entire trip. And pretty soon after the trip started, I realized that she had no desire to do any sightseeing or any normal touristy stuff. All she cared about was going out and drinking with the strangers in our hostel. She woke up at 3 or 4 p.m. every day, and then I would go do touristy stuff while she slept. And at one point she literally said, "We need to stop getting dinner," because I was wanting to go to these cute rooftop places, and she was like, "We need to stop wasting our time doing that. We need to get back to the hostel so we can start drinking and go out." I had sent her my itinerary of everything I wanted to do on my trip that she crashed, and she just came in and changed everything. For our first night in the hostel, we met these two girls, and I was iffy about them right off the bat because they were just very much not girls. The first conversation I heard between the two of them, they were body shaming this other girl in our hostel and making fun of her because she was talking to this guy that they thought was cute. They were just being really mean and giving, you know, boy crazy, pick me vibes, you know, the whole 9 yards. And don't get me wrong, I love my girly time talk. Let's gossip about boys. I'm so here for it. But if your only personality is being boy crazy and talking about boys and putting down other women in the process, I'm not here for that. And of course, Alex was so hell-bent on hanging out with them the whole time. There were so many other really cool girls in the hostel that I wanted to hang out with, but Alex was like, no, we need to hang out with them. They're so fun. And we just ended up fucking following them around. Our second night, me, Alex, and those two girls make plans to go to this club. And beforehand, we were all drinking like in the lobby of the hostel. And the two girls meet these two guys that they really like. And guess what happens? Take a wild fucking guess. They completely ignore me and Alex to go hang out with those guys. Exactly like how I had predicted in my That's So Raven era. I knew that was gonna happen. I had literally just got done telling Alex, as soon as those girls meet guys, they're gonna ditch us. They were talking to those two guys and ignoring us, and then I think it was Alex who asked the one girl, she was like, so are we still gonna go to the club? And they were like, yeah, we're still gonna go, we're just gonna bring these guys with us. Hi sisters! We walked to the club in like two groups. It's like the two girls and then the guys they met, and then me and Alex walking behind them. And then as soon as we get to the club, the four of them ditch us, and then it's just me and Alex. So me and Alex are like dancing, having a good time, and this guy comes up and starts talking to me. So the guy comes over and stands with us, and him and I are like talking and dancing and stuff, but I'm turned facing Alex. So I'm like talking to her the whole time, completely engaged, like present, not like I'm like off with him somewhere, like I am turned facing her, talking to her. She's a part of this, like dancing with her as well. And all of a sudden, Alex turns to me and says, I'm gonna go get a drink. And I'm like, oh, do you want me to come with you? I'll go get another one too. And she goes, don't even bother. And then walks away. So I'm just like standing there confused. And I turn to the guy and I'm like, I'm gonna go find my friend. And he's like, oh, I also have to go to the bathroom, so I'll just come and walk with you. So we start going towards the bathroom because the bar and the bathroom are like next to each other. And I see Alex standing at the bar. So of course I go over to her and I'm like, hey, are you okay? And here's where things go awry. So she turns to me and she starts literally screaming in my face, y'all. Screaming. You're a fucking pick-me. You're everything. You're exactly like those girls you were talking about. Like, you're such a pick-me. Like, blah, blah, blah. You're a horrible friend. Fuck you for ditching me. Blah, blah, blah. Like, going off on me. Screaming in the middle of this club. And she starts crying. And at first I felt bad because I didn't like fully understand what was going on or why she was screaming at me. So I gave her a hug and I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's wrong? And she literally like pushes me back and goes, don't fucking touch me. Like, what you did to me is so fucked up. I can't believe you. Like, you're such a pick me. All you care about is male validation. Which made me physically laugh out loud because of how absurd that was. I know she said that on purpose because I talk a lot about how I healed my self-esteem issues and like completely got rid of any want or need I used to have for male validation, and how like I'm a new person, and then like that's something like I'm super proud of, was that I worked through those issues and have taken men off a pedestal, and male validation is literally the last thing on my mind, and I talk about that all the time. And I know that she purposely said that, like trying to think of the number one thing that would get under my skin, and that's also why she said the pick me thing, because none of it made any sense. And so I'm like screaming back at her and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you're name calling me? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I didn't even ditch you. And then she starts backpedaling and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't even know what a pick me is. I don't know why I said that. The most ironic part about her being mad at me for abandoning her for a guy is because every single time her and I go out, she ditches me for a guy without fail. We stopped being friends for like 5 months last year because one time we were at a club and she knowingly ditched me and left me completely by myself, and something really bad happened to me, but she eventually gaslit me into thinking it wasn't her fault, and I ended up forgiving her and becoming friends with her again, which now I'm realizing was a huge fucking mistake. The only reason she didn't ditch me that night was because she hadn't found a guy that she liked, but I can guarantee you if she did, she would have been not even like hanging out with me and him, like she would have been off with him. That's what she does every single time. I at least was like with her still, like engaged. That guy was just there too, you know? Also, while this whole thing is going down, the guy that I was talking to was literally just standing there next to us, like, what the fuck? And also, while she was yelling at me, she was repeatedly screaming, he's not even cute, he's not even cute, while he's right there, and that just wasn't even true. After she's done with her 10-minute rant about how shitty I am and how much she doesn't like me, she eventually just goes, okay, just go be with him, bye, and then leaves the club. So fast forward to the next morning, and I wake up at a reasonable time because I'm paying thousands of dollars to be on this trip, and I go do some sightseeing stuff. And that night, her and I were supposed to go on this boat party, and I had her ticket on my phone, and so I was like, okay, I need to send this to her because she paid money for it. It's her ticket. I'm just gonna send it to her. And keep in mind, we had not spoke since the night prior after the big blowout fight. I text her the ticket, and she responds, and she says, so can we not talk about last night? I really just want to move past it and pretend that nothing happened. And I was like, says guilty person. Like, of course you want to pretend nothing happened because you know you were the one in the wrong. So at this point, it's her second to last day, and I'm just like, no amount of back and forth is gonna be beneficial to anybody. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure, let's move past it. So I come back to the hostel, and she pretends that nothing happened, just continued to bully me and be mean to me the entire trip. And now after like looking back and analyzing our friendship, I realized that there were so many red flags. Like, she would always just like make fun of me as like, but just always played it off as a joke. Like, she would say mean or hurtful things, but just play it off as like, oh, I'm just kidding. You know, you can't be mad at me. It's just a joke. You know, you're too sensitive type thing. Honestly, I'm just glad now I see her true colors, and now I know how she actually feels about me. So lesson learned, if you want to see if your friendship is real or not, go on a trip, because I promise you'll see what the fuck is up.